In 2019, a team at Tel Aviv University pointed an ultrasonic microphone at a tomato plant and cut into its stem. The recording that came back is still sitting in a research paper, and once you hear what it means, you're never going to look at a garden the same way again. They'd set up mics tuned to frequencies way past what human ears can register and pointed them at tomato and tobacco plants. Then they started stressing the plants out, cutting stems, cutting off water, making their lives miserable for science. The mics picked something up, clicking, popping sounds, fast and irregular, somewhere between 20 and 100 kilohertz. Way above what you can hear, but right in the zone that moths, mice, and bats pick up without any trouble at all. Healthy plants barely made a sound. Stressed ones clicked constantly. And here's the detail that actually got researchers' attention. A plant that had been cut clicked in a different pattern than a plant that was just thirsty. Different injury, different sound. So plants might have been doing this the entire time we've known them, just outside our hearing range. We didn't need to imagine some sci-fi plant language. It's apparently been sitting there in a pitch we simply can't hear this whole time. Quick definition, because this is where most videos on this topic go wrong. Pain, the thing you feel when you touch a hot stove, needs specific hardware. Nerve endings called nociceptors, a nervous system to carry the signal, a brain to actually interpret damage as "this hurts." Plants have none of that. No neurons anywhere in a plant's body, ever. Which, on paper, should end the conversation right there. No brain, no pain. Simple. Except plants are running something that looks a lot like the software version of a nervous system, minus the hardware. And that's the part that makes this more complicated than a yes or no answer. Damage a leaf, and an electrical pulse moves outward from the wound through the plant's vascular tissue at roughly a centimeter per second. It isn't identical to a nerve impulse in your arm, but it's built on the same basic idea, a voltage change carrying information. In 2018, a team watched this happen directly using fluorescent sensors tuned to glutamate, the same chemical your own brain uses to pass signals between neurons. One leaf gets damaged, and within about 2 minutes, a calcium wave has rippled out to leaves on the far side of the plant that were never touched. The whole plant finds out about an injury almost instantly and starts producing defensive chemicals in tissue nowhere near the original wound. A plant with no neurons is using one of your brain's own signaling chemicals to broadcast an injury alert to its entire body. That's not consciousness, but it's not nothing either. None of this proves a plant experienced anything resembling suffering. That's the distinction almost every serious researcher in this field is careful to draw, and it's worth sitting with because it's the hinge the whole debate turns on. A response to damage is not the same thing as an experience of pain. A thermostat responds to temperature. Nobody suggests a thermostat suffers. The real question isn't whether plants react to injury. That part is settled. The real question is whether there's anything it is like to be a plant while that reaction happens, or whether it's simply chemistry doing what chemistry does with no one home to feel it. Here's one you've smelled 100 times without knowing what it actually was. Fresh-cut grass smell, that green, sharp scent everyone associates with summer, comes from a group of compounds called green leaf volatiles. Plants release them the instant tissue gets torn or crushed. It's less the smell of a healthy lawn and more the plant equivalent of an alarm going off. Nearby plants can pick up on these airborne chemicals. Some species ramp up their own defenses before an insect even reaches them, purely because they detected a neighbor getting eaten, sometimes even a neighbor of a completely different species. So that satisfying smell after mowing the lawn, you're breathing in a chemical distress broadcast, sent out by every blade you just cut, warning whatever's left standing. This is the study that made a lot of plant biologists genuinely uncomfortable, and it's a good one. Researcher Monica Gagliano worked with Mimosa pudica, the plant that folds its leaves shut the instant you touch it, presumably as a defense reflex. She built a rig that dropped potted mimosa plants a short, harmless distance over and over. On the first drop, every plant folded up in alarm, exactly as you'd expect. By the fourth or fifth drop, though, most of the plants had stopped folding. They'd essentially figured out this particular threat wasn't actually dangerous, and it wasn't worth the energy to keep reacting to it. The stranger part, when she came back and dropped the same plants again a full month later, they still didn't fold. A month is a long time in plant terms. That's habituation and memory. The same category of learning that lets you stop flinching at a loud noise once you've heard it enough times, happening in something with no brain to store the memory in. If a plant can learn and remember without a nervous system, that's worth sitting with for a second. Here's where the disagreement gets genuinely sharp, and where this stops being a tidy story with an obvious winner. On one side stands biologist Anthony Trewavas, who has spent decades arguing that plants show a real form of intelligence, remembering past stresses, adjusting future behavior, warning neighbors through airborne chemical signals. Trewavas doesn't claim plants feel pain the way animals do, but he argues the line separating mere mechanism from genuine responsiveness is far blurrier than most people assume. On the other side stands a large body of neuroscientists and philosophers of mind who point out something simple but decisive. Pain, as we study it in animals, requires nociceptors, a central nervous system, a brain capable of integrating signals into something resembling an experience. Plants have none of these. A 2019 review in the journal Trends in Plant Science, surveying the accumulated electrophysiology research, concluded that while plant signaling is real, rapid, and biologically significant, stretching the word pain to describe it goes further than current evidence can support. Scientists prove plants scream. When cut makes for a better headline than "Scientists detect electrical signaling," consistent with damage response, subjective experience, undetermined. But the second version is the honest one, and it doesn't make the underlying science any less remarkable. It just refuses to answer a question the evidence hasn't actually settled. Here's the actual answer, and it isn't as clean as either side wants it to be. Plants almost certainly have no inner experience. No fear, no suffering, nothing it is like to be a plant getting cut. Consciousness, as far as anyone can currently tell, needs wiring plants simply don't have. But plants detect damage, broadcast that information through their entire body within minutes, remember things that happened to them weeks earlier, and mount specific defenses depending on exactly what kind of damage occurred. All of it with no brain involved at all. So the honest way to put it isn't plants feel pain. It's that plants figured out how to do almost everything an organism in pain does. Detect it, signal it, remember it, defend against it, without ever needing to actually feel anything. Which brings you back to your kitchen windowsill, the basil, the tomato vine, whatever you're growing that you'll eventually pinch, cut, or tear without a second thought. Nothing about that gesture will ever look dramatic. There's no scream, no flinch, nothing your eyes or ears could ever pick up. But somewhere in that stem, for a few seconds, an electrical wave moves, a chemical alarm fires, and a defense gets dispatched to leaves you never touched, running on the same basic signaling chemistry your own brain uses, in a body that almost certainly feels none of it. Not because plants are simple, because whatever is happening in there doesn't need anyone home to feel it in order to work. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week about the strange edges of biology and behavior, about the questions that sound simple until you actually look at the evidence. If that's something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive. See you in the next one.